So take this in for a minute. I mean, what's it feel like to you to hear all is mind, and that we are basically thought forms from creation? What's that feel like?
Overwhelming.
Okay. Overwhelming. Why?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I guess because it's kind of beyond my understanding at this point, for lack of a better word.
Right. I understand that. I get that. What do you mean all is mind? What? I'm not real. Well, in a way, we're not as real as we think we are. We kind of live in a holographic universe that if you stop and you really break it down and think about it, what are our thoughts? We have 60,000 thoughts a day. The human mind has 60,000 thoughts a day. Can you keep up with all those thoughts? I don't know about you, but I can't. But when you begin to understand all the mentalism that goes on with us in our functions, our body functions, the things that we do. I mean, there's a thought process that happens first before anything. Before I'm snapping my fingers over the thought process that says snap your fingers. All is mind. We use our imagination. Who here has worked with like the law of attraction, and you hear visualization and all of this other stuff?
I would use it for the law of attraction, but I've done a lot of visualization.
Okay, so where do you do that at though? Do you
Like to
over here? Where do you do that? Mind.
And yeah, I don't really have a problem with that whole idea that we're energy forms, because I kind of thought that for a long time. Just, I've done a lot of yoga, and within that, you address some of those things through meditation, and different principles that they have, I guess. But yeah, I think it makes sense.
Well, if you think about everything, driving the car, you mentally have to understand the mechanics of driving the car before you can physically drive a car. Things that we take for granted each and every day comes from the mind. The chair you're sitting in came from someone's mind. Everything is born twice. First it's born in mind, and then it's manifested. So when we begin to understand the true power of our mind and what we're capable of through doing this alchemy, doing this spiritual alchemy and clearing out the clutter in our minds and begin to expand our consciousness, then what happens is we begin to hone our magic. Because ultimately this is what it is, just magic. This is what the magicians and the witches and all from the shamans, this is what magic is, right here, spiritual transformation. That is the original magics. And that was what was occulted. They wanted to give you the Hollywood version. They wanted to give you, the scary version to keep you away from it. Well, that's the devil's work. But where do they tag you at? In your mind. Fear is created in the mind. How many times before we go to do something huge in our life, or even small, but it's out of the ordinary, do you get that little sense of, well, what's everybody going to think of me? Or, I'm afraid to do that. Or, what's going to happen? And then all stimulates up here. We start creating these scenarios in our mind. See, it's no interesting surprise that all is mind. So we are the thought forms dancing around in the mind of the universe, the creator, whatever you want to call it, because it doesn't care what you call it. I've called it several things, and not every one of them have always been nice, depending on my mood. And it answers every time, so it really doesn't care what we call it. So right there is an old belief. You have to call it by a certain name for it to answer you. Well, that one's gone. But the thing of it is I have noticed that fear is what controlled me for a very long time. Now, granted, I had some episodes throughout my life that gave me physical fear, right? That were duly understood. But a lot of my fears that kept me from doing anything different in life was old programming that I had picked up. old belief systems that didn't belong to me, that were handed down through generation, through generation, through generation. That I had to go through the alchemical process within me to discover the lie and to reconcile the truth. And start, for the longest time, I took a whole bunch of classes, and for the longest time, they would tell me, you too are the Christ. I've been a witch for as long as I can remember, and I had no idea how much Christian doctrine had been shoved down my throat growing up. And I had the hardest time embodying that I too was a chrysaor. And so were you. I had to reconcile that old belief, and I didn't even know that old belief was in me until I started taking classes to expand my consciousness. And it freaked me out, and it made me start thinking, what else has been programmed up here? And I started doing some research on what the brain and the mind are. They're not the same thing. The brain is just a receptacle to hold memory. That's it. Now, in our memories and in our DNA, we are coded with certain energetics that when we see a certain sacred geometry, or when we see a certain phrase, or even color combinations, it will trigger cellular memory within us, because our genetics, this isn't our first, we came from a line of genetics, right? And this is where the mind and the body and the spirit kind of meet for the first time when we start investigating all this mind. Because that says that each cell has a consciousness too. And that this body lineage that I happen to be in has cellular memory, even though I may not have experienced it in this lifetime. I have a certain fear or a certain pull or a certain drive to a certain place on the planet, certain foods, certain beliefs. Well, where does that come from? And that comes from our genetics. That comes from our DNA that is still pulling us in that cellular memory. So that in itself can be looked at as reincarnation to a degree, in one aspect. So it filters down through the tree of life. Another thing is when I started recognizing that I was having a problem saying that I too am the Christ, that I am the Christ consciousness, that twisted me up inside. And it made me really, like I was saying, really go in there and go, I'm going to start challenging myself. Instead of initially when I hear something, sometimes when we hear something that we consider new, which there is nothing new under the sun. Everything I'm bringing you here has been around for thousands and thousands of years. I'm just bringing my own unique personality to it. That's it, right? But a lot of times when I was in this investigative work, I would hear something and it would just, no! Contempt prior to investigation, right? I would feel this twist inside me, and instead of questioning myself and asking myself, why is that twisting you up, Michelle? If it's twisting me up, then there's a form of truth in there that my ego doesn't want me to see, that my old programming doesn't want me to unplug from the matrix. Those are unique, distinct, set up systems in our psyche, in our bodies, and in our spirit to make us ask the questions. It's just we're not taught to do that anymore. We're not taught to understand our spiritual nervous system. We're not taught to understand that our chakras are portals to other dimensions and that we can time travel in this essence through meditation. We're not taught these things anymore. We're not taught that our body will and does respond to our thoughts. When I first started this work 4 years ago, I was in AA. I was addicted to opiates. My back always hurt, always hurt. They told me that I had degenerative arthritis. I had bulging discs back there. I had slip discs. I was a mess, right? And me being in victim mentality because, well, that's what I had experienced and it worked for me after a while, so I kept playing the role for a long time, poor me. Of course, it was also to help me get more pain pills. You know, the more ailments I had, the more they prescribed them to me and the stronger they would get. And what I didn't really understand at the time was what I was telling the doctors and complaining to myself constantly about. My body was manifesting more and more of it. So when I first started this deep, deep work 4 years ago, I started working with my own mind. And I says, okay, let's put this to practice. Let's see if this really works. And I started doing what I call mirror work, that you'll be doing too. And I started looking at myself and I told myself, I'm long, I'm lean, I'm pain-free. My body is strong. My mind is open. It is clear. And I would say this to myself every day. And I'd look myself dead in the eye and say, you're amazing and I love you. And let me tell you, that was not an easy task in the beginning. It is not easy if you're not used to looking and claiming your divinity. And I don't mean it from, look at me. No, not at all. I mean it as looking myself in the eye and saying, Michelle, I love you. And you're amazing. That was about as uncomfortable as it got. It really was. But within 2 weeks, my body started responding to what I was thinking. Because as soon as I would catch myself going into a disempowering thought, or going into wanting to say, I'm tired, or I'm sick, or I'm, one of the things I did when I went to AA, everybody wants to sit around and say, I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict. I'm not. I'm recovered. I'm not staying sick. Because one of the things I've learned is whatever I claim in the I am statement is exactly what I become. So I'm very mindful today about what I finished that sentence with. My body started responding. They don't teach us that anymore as children. They used to in the mystery school. They don't teach us that anymore. In the ancient covens and the ancient shamanistic groups, when children were born, they would take them off and teach them these things of how to understand the mind, body, and the spirit and have it working as one, understanding the mechanics of the body, listening when the body talks to you, and telling the body what you need of it. We're not taught these things anymore. We should be. Because they work well together. They suck when they're separate. Well, what is it? Divide and conquer, right? If we can divide the psyche, if we can fracture and splinter the body and the mind from each other, then Big Farm wins, because the sicker we get as society. The more they bombard us with the network media, all right, of what's wrong with us. There's a new disease today. Here are the symptoms. Here's a pill that'll cure that, but you'll have 30,000 side effects, okay? It might kill you, but you won't have the hiccups anymore, right?
Including the thing it's supposed to fix.
Exactly. There's no coincidence that we have been fractured, not only in our personal psyches, but as a human consciousness, and why things are the way they are today. This is why these type of classes, I hope they start springing up all over the country. I know of several other people doing the exact line of work that I'm doing that I had no prior knowledge of until I said yes to the charge that I felt the Spirit was giving me. Because 4 years ago, I felt this unsatiable drive that I have to do something, and I kept getting this information and getting this information, and I just followed through with it and followed through with it. And there are people across the globe that are teaching this same work right here. Because this is what's going to free the human spirit from bondage. You want to keep reading, honey?
Considering the message of this text, if all originates in the mind and is born of thought, then there is no separation between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. No separation between energy and matter. And this is why paying close attention to our thoughts is so utterly important. Our thoughts dictate our feelings, for we are the very manifestation of the thought of the Creator, God, Allah, whoever you want to call it. We are living in a mental universe that is connecting our thoughts to our desires, And this is the beginning of what creates the manifestations that we experience in the material plane. The mental universe then brings to us, through its creation process, that which we are really feeling with our thoughts. For the universe does not say no to us, only we do that. For example, if you have older tires on your car and you start worrying about getting a flat tire and being late to work, and you start thinking, I really don't want a flat tire, that'll make me late for work and I really don't want that. Well, guess what? You walk outside the next morning and your tire's flat and therefore you are late for work. The universe in this case would only hear, I really want a flat tire. That would make me late for work and I really want that.
So how many times throughout your life, and this is something I would like for you to really pay attention to from here on in, and journal about it. This class is all about journaling, just get used to writing, okay? Well, trust me, you're going to want it. But how many times have you, really been fearful about something? And you really didn't want it to manifest. But you kept feeling like it was going to manifest. But you didn't really want it to manifest. And it's like you were beating your head. And the next thing you know, there it is. And then you get that, I just knew that was going to happen. We've all done that, right? We've all done that. We manifested that. By sitting there and focusing our attention, it triggers the feeling, okay? Because the mind and the emotions are highly connected, right? It triggers that feeling, and our feelings is what vibrates out to the universe. And that's what the universe responds to. So if I'm constantly thinking about not wanting a flat tire, all the universe is hearing is I and I want. Because if you really pay attention, where's the feeling tone on that? Is it on don't? No, there's no feeling associated with don't. It's only an I and want. And that's what the universe says. And the universe never says no to us. It always says yes. Always says yes. Everything, that's why we learn to control our thoughts. That's why we understand mental focus. We use our visioning faculties, mental faculties. We use our thought process. We use our reasoning. We use our imagination. Because all of these things can hone us. We watch what we say about ourselves. And we watch the chatter appear. Because all of this directs the energy into what we want. And if we're powerful beings that we are, and we are, then what we like attracts like. So if I'm thinking, I want this message to get out across the land, I'm going to start discovering, the more I put myself into this work, all of a sudden I'm discovering people are popping up everywhere doing the exact same work. And I've had no previous knowledge of these people whatsoever. Walking through AA, when I first started claiming I'm recovering, people would cringe when they would hear me say recovering. Because they didn't want to, they wanted to stay sick. I didn't want to stay sick. And I don't want the human race to stay sick. And I damn sure don't want our consciousness to stay sick. Because we're connected to each other. And when one heals, we all heal. Right? Keep reading, lady.
Another example is how our thoughts can drift to events of the past. If it was a painful experience, do you notice how you contract in your midsection, almost kind of withdrawing within yourself, trying to shy away from it? Do you pay attention to the feeling attached to the memory? If we're not paying attention to how our thoughts dictate our feelings, we get into habitual patterns of constantly thinking in fear, doubt, and pain, and living from those places instead of thinking from a place of gratitude, joy, and love. Most of us have trained ourselves to live from thoughts of lack. I want more money. I want a new car. I want a new house. I want a new job because the current stuff that I have right now sucks. Instead of thoughts of gratitude and appreciation, joy, prosperity, and happiness. I love my house. I'm very grateful for it. My car gets me to where I need to go and it looks stylish while it does it. I get to do something awesome and serve people every day at my job. I'm grateful for that. What we pay attention to is exactly what we see in the world and in ourselves. If we're seeking to change our lives, then we must change our thinking, because energy follows thought. And what we put our energy into thinking, the universe will bring us more exactly that. So how do we do this? By focusing on the present instead of the distant past or the far-off future. Christ Jesus died between two thieves, the past and the future.
Now, how often have you found yourself speaking things to complain about? Old relationships, jobs, finances, past events, politics, instead of things to be grateful about? How often do you let fear dictate your thinking?
More than I should.
Right. Anybody else?
I don't know if it's so much fear, but I find myself lately, I guess. And I know, I mean, I do try and walk in gratitude every day and make it a conscious. But I find myself really just this old crap that just constant. And I'll catch myself and, no, let's think. But it just seems like it's overwhelming lately. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's all coming up and I just need to, I don't know.
Well, see, actually, that's a good thing. Seriously, that is a good thing because that is your spirit telling you it is time to release. And the thing of it is, and this is where we talk about what the universe hears is our vibration, right? So yes, mentalism is extremely important in honing our abilities. But if we have not dug deep into our shadows and explored the dark recesses and the corners that we have buried, that we have, ignored, what we have resisted over the years. Oh, that happened, 16 years ago. Why is that still bothering me? Because you never processed it. And what you did is you hung on, you clung to. So anytime anything comes up and triggers that old emotional wound, what is happening is instead of releasing it and processing it and moving through it and forgiving yourself and the other party or whatever, you're still contracting on it, so you're clinging to that. And that's why it never goes away, and that's why these thoughts will pop up just out of the blue. They have to be faced. They have to be looked at for what they are. They have to be processed, they have to be felt in order to release them. Or they keep revisiting us. And that's what more of this work, that's why I'm offering myself as far as you guys calling me and talking to me about your week. Because there's going to be some shadow work in here and it's very uncomfortable shadow work. As I was saying earlier, I came from a family where mother didn't want children. She was 16. She didn't want a child. She hated my father. So when she would look at me, that's what she saw was the product of my father. And I had 5 male members in my family take their turn with me from the time I was 4 years old up. I am very grateful for that experience today. All of it. Because I'm sitting where I'm sitting today. And I get to do what I get to do in serving people today and helping them through. I got to face my shadows and call bullshit on them and see them for what they really were. Something keeping me from being all that I can be. Something keeping me from expressing myself fully. My father is in spirit now, and I know there's only life, and we've had our conversation. And he has said he is sorry and that he didn't know any better because it was visited upon him. And this is what we do to each other. If we're not consciously aware of our programming and we don't acknowledge the things that have happened to us and face them head on with an open heart, with ourself allowing to feel so that we can forgive, not forgive the action. But the person who perpetrated this action upon you may have had the same action given to them. And they didn't know any better because there was no one there to show them anything different. And that's why I can forgive him. And why today I actually hold gratitude in my heart because I've been able to help a lot of women that have survived incest and a lot of men. It happens more to men than you realize. and get through and on the other side of empowerment and taking and soul retrieval by going into it, by seeing it, by discussing it, by seeing it and owning my part of it. I gotta own my part. What was my part in that situation? I was a 4-year-old little girl. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody, and I allowed myself to play victim for a very long time and use it to my advantage to manipulate other people. There's my part. I have to own it. I have to. Because if I don't own it, I'm holding the lie in me. And if I hold the lie in me, it keeps me from expanding. So we have to look at these things. We can't be afraid, no matter how long ago they were. And I want you to know I'm here for each and every one of you, and there's nothing any of y'all have gone through that I haven't gone through. Probably a lot harder. Because I chose a really hard lifetime this time, on purpose. And I'm grateful I did. Because I can identify. I can identify. And identifying and understanding and having already been there and be able to share an experience of mine and bringing it, that puts us on the same ground. And if I can get there, you can get there. You know, because you're worth it. And soul retrieval is an amazing way of bringing all of yourself back into one unified divine being. I'm going to keep reading, baby.
We've got some quotes here, all about mentalism. We cannot say that one thought is created while another is not. We must say that all thought is created according to the nature, impulse, emotion, or conviction behind the thought. Thought creates a mold in the subjective, in which the idea is accepted and poured, and sets power in motion in accordance with the thought. Ignorance of this excuses no one from its effects, for we are dealing with law and not with whimsical fantasy. Ernest Holmes.
Any comments or? Okay.
We are shaped by our thoughts. We become what we think. When the mind is pure, joy follows like a shadow that never leaves. Next we have, there is nothing that enters a man from outside which can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are the things that defile a man. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. From Jesus himself in Mark 7:15-16. And also, for as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. Proverbs 23:7.
See, we can keep these things to ourselves all that we want. But by keeping them to ourselves, it's just the same as doing it. What we think, if I can think about murdering somebody in my head, I already have. It, to some degree, I've assassinated this person. Now, did I physically go out and do it? No. But my anger was so intent and so strong that I just shot this out to the universe. And I just shot all kind of nasty energy to this person. So instead today, instead of getting angry or choosing sides, like this whole political thing right now, why choose a side? Sides divide and conquer us, right? So my views and how I do things, the choice, because that's the power I have today is choice. What can I do to, in my part of the universe, what can I do? This is what I can do. This is what I can bring. If we stop giving power to either side, guess what? They're going to start listening to us. But they divided and conquered us so much that we won't even come together and listen to each other and find a solution. Because we're too busy finding problems in each other. And the only reason why we keep finding problems in each other is because each one of us is a mirror to the other one. So whatever I can point out in you, I got 3 more fingers coming back at me. So this is where I really need to do the looking, is in here.
Yeah, we were talking about, just a little bit ago about how we complain. Well, what I find with myself, and it's been a big struggle for me to deal with, when there's something to complain about, that almost immediately turns into anger. And that is something that's very hard to work with sometimes.
What that tells me, and we are going to be a very close-knit group, what we talk about in here stays in here. This is safe. This place is safe. We can be open and honest with each other, no judgment whatsoever. But what that tells me is that you've held on to a lot of anger inside, which you haven't expressed yet. And that's why it's coming up on these little things, because it's just that trigger, that fuse is getting shorter and shorter. And with the energy that's going around and what you know, you're not a stupid woman. The energy flies off of you, and I see your intelligence. Common sense doesn't grow in everyone's garden, okay? And that can be very frustrating sometimes. And you just want to wring someone's neck. It's like, really? Why? What is so difficult, right? But when we start addressing our own anger, and we start asking the deeper questions within ourselves, what is it about this is really pissing me off? What is this triggering? Because it's all about me. It always boils back to me. Always. If I'm not the problem, there is no solution. And I have to ask myself, what's really going on with you, Michelle? What's the truth here? What's triggering you into this anger? And as long as I continue pulling back the layers, I end up finding the root. But here's the cool thing. Yeah, that's pain in the ass sometimes, having to go through it. But when I uncover the root, I never got to experience that again because I learned my lesson. I learned what it really is. And once you can pluck that root out, you ain't got to experience that karma no more. You're off that wheel. There is a way of getting off the wheel of karma for the negative aspect. There is. But that takes, you have to own your shit. And that means you have to be willing to go inside and ask the questions that are very, very uncomfortable and get truthful and honest with yourself. Because that gets rid of the layers of the human bullshit. The human condition is what I call it. We have been conditioned to feel, act, think the way we do. We've been conditioned to compare ourselves to each other. We have been conditioned by the media and Revlon and all of these of what beauty really is. Right? I mean, France, okay, let's just put it here this way. When I lived in Florida, I never wore a bra. Ever. Because I saw a study that over in Europe, most women don't wear a bra, and breast cancer was almost nil. I didn't wear a bra until I came back to Ohio. I think it had something to do with it's really, really cold up here. Right? And the headlights were always on. And I was in the public eye. I wasn't hibernating in my, what are you turning red for?
I think you're single out here.
Your headlights come on too when it's cold, sweetheart. You're no different than we are. But I was in the public eye up here too. And we're in Florida. I was homeschooling my son, and I was at home in a lot. And so I came up here and I started wearing a bra. And damned if I didn't see a thing on Facebook the other day about that same article that I had read that stopped me from wearing it. And I'm like, I'm about to really just go into a burning of the bra thing. I'm going to go downtown Dayton and I'm just going to light them up and see how many women I can get to do it. Because if you really think about it, what's a bra do? It holds in all the toxins, right? Breast can't breathe, right?